All right, folks. Shalom and welcome to the Yishai Fleischer Show, broadcasting live from Judea to the world. You're a part of it wherever you are. And shalom and welcome to Rabbi Mike Foyer of Mike. Great to have you back on the show.
Oh, it's been far too long, my friend. Far too long. Thank you for
It
having me.
has. That's right. It has been too long. I'm a little rusty at going live, but okay, we're back. And not a minute too early because, well, gosh, we have this we have this situation in the country, and it is this. It's kind of there's protests. There's protests in the street. There's a effort to change some of the laws governing the judiciary of the country and its powers. And that has unleashed a huge wave of protests and tensions to the point that today the J Post ran an article talking about a new organization that has formed that's promoting the split up of the state of Israel into New Israel and the state of Judea. And it was a very serious and long article with how to do it and how to move that forward. There's an organization promoting that, and basically the underlying theme is simple. The premise is simple, and that is that we are two different polities with two different sets of values, and if this course continues without a course correction, then it's going to lead to destruction. So better a nice divorce now than a civil war later. That's basically basically the thinking, and not a minute too soon, since we are now going to be commemorating Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, which is really commemorating the destruction of the first and second temples and many other calamities. But most of those calamities you could point to the infighting amongst the Jewish people. The Talmud, in the famous story of the destruction of the temple, talks about really the societal tensions, the hate, the baseless hate, and the bad decisions. I think the Talmud actually lays it out like there's some bad thinking about how do we manage our relationships, and they led to utter destruction. So, right before Tisha B'Av tonight, I wanted to reach out to you. Really, I was like, I got to talk to Rav Mike on air about the situation that we're facing, and see. And the way I titled it is "Finding Strength Through the 9th of Av," which is how do we actually use it as a positive fulcrum, not only to say like, look, we did bad in the past, this is what led to destruction, and here we are again. More like, are there lessons that we can get out of the 9th of Av historically that could give us strength in this tumultuous moment?
Yeah, there are many. First of all, I think it's important just to put a finger on something that's happening here, which is, the old saying that history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme, right? That we're a people that lives a rhythm of bayamim hahem bazman hazeh. In those days, linearly speaking, at this time and this time of the year. And here we are on the 9th of Av, or close to it, in the week of the 9th of Av. And we're once again living through the tension between what I might call the mission orientation and the present reality. Right? There's a tension between the mission orientation, whether you want to think of it as idealistic, whether you want to think of it as sort of more, ideological, and the present reality, which is like everyone has to live the way they are. So, like the spies in the desert, there was a group of them who said, "Listen, life is good in the desert. We got God teaching Torah to Moses, Moses to us. We got the manna and the water. And listen, things are complicated in there. It's going to get messy. It's going to get muddy. Our spiritual status will descend, etc., etc." And you had Yoshua and Caleb who said, "Okay, true, but we have mission. We're going somewhere. This is we're not just a people. We're not just a group hanging out trying to survive, but we're actually trying to get somewhere." And we see this repeat itself through time in arguments about the mission. Indeed, we're part of that causeless hatred. I'm really into the idea of actually, instead of causeless hatred, but the costless hatred. And people like I think that part of the challenge, that what tears us apart, is people think that hating one another doesn't have a price. And I think that a lot of what's going on in the streets right now is it feels really good to hate your fellow Jew, and people don't see the price. And last but not least, and this is the piece where I'd like to really push on, where the hope lies, is that so finally in the state of Israel, we're talking about substance.
Yeah, no, I heard you there. Sorry. Yeah, sorry I lost you there for a second. And what you were saying is that there's a cost less hate, and that's very true. Ironically, It could be that there's a costless hate because of the bigness of the country, right? There's just a
Absolutely.
lot of people, and you could just live a different life in Tel Aviv than you would here in Judea. And the size of the country, which is not that big, but it's big enough, and the amount of people, and you could tune into a different channel, and you can watch channel 14, which is right wing nationalist, or you can watch 12, which is leans more towards the left, and maybe even towards some post Zionism, and you don't have to have that interchange anymore. It's like there's like 10 million people living in this country and 7.5 million Jews, which is an awesome number. I mean, when I was a kid, there was 3 million Jews. Now there's 6.5. Gosh, what did I say? Is 6.5 million? No, 7
You said
million
7.
Jews, right? 7+ million Jews here in the country. Yeah, the 7 plus now, and so like that's a total shift. And when you sit here. Here's one of the differences, though. When you're in Judea, I could drive really 5 minutes from my house, and I could look down and see Tel Aviv. And I could see that it's in the palm of my hand. I could see that it's right there below, and it's part of my thing. If you go to Tel Aviv and you turn around, the mountains seem very far away. You're like, I don't know if I need this, and who needs this, and it's just a mess over there. In any case, there are sometimes you're a victim of success when the town is small. Everybody. And then you want it to grow. It grows big, but then it changes its character. And there's an element of that. There's also
Can I add a split there?
Sure.
Because there's an important image, I think, to understand what's happening right now. And when you're sitting in the middle of the yeshiva and you're learning Torah all day long with thousands of other Bechurim, and you live in a neighborhood, in a community where you're surrounded by that, it's easy to forget the hardworking people who go to the army and drive large parts of the economy to create the context, the physical context for that learning. And the flip side is when you're out there in the army or you're in the work of the daily grind, you don't really have any idea, much less appreciation for the thriving soul of Am Yisrael, which is being nurtured in the yeshiva. Right. So like it's not just the size of the country, it's our tribal nature. But we really run in parallel tracks, and when that's healthy, it's a source of abundance and adaptability and diversity. When it's not, it's a real challenge.
Okay, and so let me go back to the original question to you. Bring back the original question, which is 9th of Av tonight. Can we glean anything positive? Like it's not a positive night, but it's got in it, sewed into it, a certain positivity. We learned that the Tisha B'Av is also a holiday. It's got that potential of being a holiday. One day on the show, instead of saying we're commemorating Tisha B'Av, I'm going to be able to say we're celebrating Tisha B'Av. That's legal, right? And that's baked in to the Tisha B'Av experience. Yeah. But I'm sure that there's people that are going to really feel this year more than any other year that I remember, except for that fateful year in 2005 of the disengagement. We really felt this way. I want to tell you, I remember one of the most powerful memories that I have, and I have a few very powerful memories from the Gaza disengagement, was that when we were kicked out of our house in Gaza and we came home, it took weeks to be able to look at the army as a positive thing again. I remember the visceral inability to embrace them because of having been feeling like, you were victimized.
Oh, you froze there for a minute.
IDF forces. And so, that was the back. Oh, here we are. We're back again. So we're having some technical difficulties. Okay. Anyway, my point to you is that indeed
it's not me, it's you.
All right, yeah, sorry about that. My point to you is that indeed Tisha B'Av, I felt once upon a time in 2005 how painful that the rift in the Jewish people was, and here we are again. And I really do think that this Tisha B'Av, a lot of people are like feeling it. They're feeling it. So what do you think about that? Is there a way to use it as a healing for Tisha B'Av, or is this one of those things where we're like, we are so dumb, we're doing it once again, we're rifting once again?
I want to put a note that we need to come back to this relationship to the expulsion from Gush Katif. I think it's very important. But before I do, want to say that in my eyes, the avoda of Tisha B'Av, the spiritual practice, is facing the brokenness of the world without filters.
Mhm.
One day of the year, not to distract ourselves, not to focus on the positive and the potential redemptive, because you're entirely correct. This is going to be a celebration. Not to put up the filters of it's meant to be or it's going to be okay, and certainly not to sort of literally distract ourselves with things. It's not easy to vote to sit and do nothing other than to look at the brokenness in my life, in my family, in my people, in the world. That is the primary avoda, in my humble opinion. And why is that redemptive? Because the world is a broken place. And on one hand, we can take comfort from that because we can understand our struggles. If the world is a broken place, then the expectation of wholeness and perfection and achievement and etc. that we often have is an important one, but we shouldn't feel like failures if we haven't gotten there yet. On the other hand, until we can see the brokenness for what it is, we'll never have a prayer of fixing it. And in that note, it's very important to note that Israel, I mean, the Jews are just like everybody else, only more so, right? The world is going through many very difficult struggles around the fundamental questions that even our political discourse is around. Where does power reside in society, right? What do you do with the tension between the sort of universalist, globalist, citizen of the world stance and the more ethnic, tribal sense of solidarity and rootedness? And you and I have discussed this many times, but that's a good sign ultimately. This is where the rift lies, and this is the source of pain. That it indicates that we're starting to get past the superficial toward the truly problematic, and it's scary and it's painful. And I'm going to say right now, I don't think we're done by a long shot.
No,
with this crisis, I don't think we're done by a long shot. And so, can I, if I can, I want to make the bridge back to, because I also have a very powerful memory. I didn't make it into Gush Katif. You guys got down there well before us. I was still politically naive at the time. But I did go with a good friend and managed to get as close to Kisufim before they just chucked us on police buses and drove us back to Ofakim. It's like a little bit of funny memory. It's like the army basically didn't even bother arresting us. Drove us back to Ofakim and they're like, if you want, you could walk again. Like, good, 10, 12 kilometers in that heat. And I came home and watched grown men cry. Grown Israeli settler men. For those who don't appreciate how unlikely it is to see them crying in a public atmosphere, because their life was falling apart in that moment. The whole momentum of their belief structure, of their daily actions, of their communities. And it was incredibly painful. And yes, weeks, I think, is a generous number for what it took to feel normal. But you never heard, past a fringe or a whisper, the idea of giving up. The idea of giving up on society, the idea that we were something other than Israeli society, because in the fabric of the people that we're dealing with was an essential commitment to mission and peoplehood, which are inseparable. And a lot of the ways that we need to move forward right now is to find the ways in which those who feel that they've lost out, those who feel their identity threatened, those who feel that something has been broken, that we can offer them the simple human comfort of saying, life goes on, and the future belongs to those who build. The future belongs to those who have children and build institutions and maintain the hopefulness of connection, and the illusion that you're going to split the state of Israel into Judea and Israel, which is not a new notion, even in our current iteration, but is foolish beyond belief, because that's like saying we're going to get divorced, but we're going to, you can have the living room, I'll take the kitchen. Let's face it, for as much as you said, yes, it's fantastic how big the land is and how wealthy and powerful we are. But bottom line, it's not like this. It's like this, and not to mention, of course, there's several active elements in there that, let's just say, don't have our interest or unity or best interest at heart. Within our society.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask you. If you read the stories of the destruction of the Second Temple, you see that there were elements in society, and they were really the extremist elements. I find today, look, from I'm going to say from my political perspective, I see folks on the left being on the more extreme side of things, I'm sure that they would think and say that the people that I represent are more on the political extreme. But
You guys are
there
both
is
the extremes. Without the negative connotation of extreme, you're
right.
both the extreme in the sense that you stand for ideological positions which are at the margins of the polity.
Right. That's right. But I wasn't just talking about positions. I'm talking about
I know.
actions. When you're shutting down the country actively, well, it's like it's and the Talmud. It's very interesting because the Talmud is like, as opposed to let's say a more Breslov type language, which says God is in control of everything, God is doing everything. The Talmud's like, bad decisions will take down society. And I
Anybody
feel like
thinks otherwise is not reading history,
right,
or the Bible.
right. In any case, right now there's just this moment where there are elements of society that are promoting a rift. That's what my sense is. There's constant language like that. There's a promotion of the rift, and a lot of scary language. And it's become clear to anybody that this is not about the judicial reform. Judicial reform is the catalyst for the argument, but that's not what it's about. It's really about this government. It's really about there was a great picture of this family, a big family, young family with a lot of kids, and the posters on the left say Demokratia, democracy.
Right.
So they held up a poster that said Demographia, right, which is demography.
That's what I said. Is the future belongs to those who have children and build institutions. Right. And we can discuss the ideological extremes. We can discuss the real voices that are really seem to be stoking a desire for violence and conflict, which, by the way, were there during Gush Katif as well, not amongst those of us who were being punished and persecuted, but amongst do you remember the calls like, there's going to be civil war, there'll be bloodshed, as if the media wanted us to act that way. Right. And it was the spiritual leadership of Gush Katif, specifically the spiritual leadership of Gush Katif, as well as the average person, who said, no, we refuse.
Right.
And that will be a mark of pride for the Jewish people forever. On
the one hand, yes, but on the other hand, when I look back at Gush Katif, frankly, I'm going to share with you a very,
I think I know what you're going to say. Go for it.
I'm going to say that I'm looking at these guys and I'm like, wow, they,
if
they
we
are really,
had done this,
right, and I was advocating for that, not for civil, not for battling too much, but for saying no, we will not allow this to happen, and we will stop this. And when I look at Gaza today, I think to myself, gosh, I wish we were stronger, because we were. Here's something you don't get to hear a lot in history. We were right. We were right. This was a disastrous thing to do, and it was obvious to us.
Similar to Oslo.
That's right. That's right. Let's shift gears for just 1 second. Oh, just to make it clear for people, tonight, people are coming to the Western Wall. Tomorrow morning, thousands of people are going to go up on the Temple Mount in the heat during the fast day. There's going to be a lot of that. There was some articles that said that some restaurants are purposefully opening tonight in Tel Aviv in order to show protest. There's some, it's like a protest against God type thing. But one of the things that, at least for me, brings me back down to a safe place, a safe space, if you will, is the Torah. Okay. And even though the Torah is not always totally, kind, and it's not always the Torah's, I mean to say, some of the predictions and the statements are harsh. Still, though, this Torah portion is a Torah portion that has a lot of consolation in it. It starts with the fact that that Moses is denied the right of going to the land of Israel, but within that you learn what is the yearning of a Jew for the land of Israel. Like, how much, if Moses yearns so much, how much more so should we yearn or appreciate the opportunity of being in this good land? That's what you learn from that. The whole Torah portion is called Ve'et Chanan, and I beg God, what did he beg God for? To go into the land of Israel. And so it's like, wow, if Moses, our great prophet, wanted so much to go to the land of Israel, how much more so should we be so thankful? And that's such a missing component right now, is to be more thankful, more loving, more charitable with the other, given this great opportunity. But then the Torah portion also goes into the famous rereading of the Ten Commandments. You know what? Before I get to that with you, Rav Mike, I just want to say that Shaul is welcoming you back, and he says, Mike is back, smiley face. Okay, so thank you, Shaul. and Yaakov is welcoming me, and he says, "Hi, Yishai."
It's your
And
show.
then our good friends, that's right. And then our good friends, Michael and Anna, say, just like old times, welcome back, Mike. But Shaul also adds, but I miss Malka also. You could get Malka on the podcast. She's there. And so does Michael and Anna Marie. They're also saying, oh, Malka needs her own show. You got it. And then we got blessings.
And a pay raise.
That's right. And Yochanan says, blessings from New Zealand. I first heard and met you 6 years ago, Yishai, when you made a speech after the walk around the old city. It was a very good speech. It was a great speech, and that speech is constantly.
If you do say so yourself.
No, because that speech is being constantly re put up by the Yishai haters on the left, because I made some pretty strong comments there, and they still use that a lot. And our good friend Lou, we ask you if the audios sound good, if it looks visually good. Lou says Shalom, Yishai, and Rav Mike. He produces our show, helps us out when we're live. So we'll look at that, and everybody's popping in. Here's Johnny, says, love you guys, stay strong, stay happy, stay healthy. That's good advice for the 9th of Av. Okay, so how do we tie in Ve'et Hanan, this Torah portion that gives you this second chance to hear the story of the Bible, filling in a lot of historical details from a different angle? But here we have the 10 Commandments coming in. For me, I'll just my one sentence is, it's given me a lot of chizuk today to read this. It's giving me a lot of strength to just read these letters, these words of the 10 Commandments. It gives me a sense that there is a truth that is non-fungible, even though it can be seen in many ways in 70 faces of the Torah. But there is a truth out there, and that truth will win through the vicissitudes of this, very divisive time in which you're really told that your truth is not truth and somebody else's truth is truth. And you're like, I don't know what really truth is. I'm like, it gives me a lot of nachat to look at the 10 Commandments today. What do you think about that?
Well, I agree with you. And in many ways, that's one of the core questions at issue is, are there immutable standards by which we as a people need to function or not? Mm-hmm. And is there a divine relationship of commandedness that stands behind that? Meaning, before we get into what the standards are, because we can have immutable standards that come from natural law. We can have immutable standards that come from wise judges. We should merit such, but the core assertion of the Torah is that God believes our actions matter and therefore commanded us to act in certain ways. But even before I get there, to me, what came up for me when you asked what's the strength that we can draw from this week's parsha, aside from the strength, as you pointed out, that we can just draw from Torah itself, as I tell my kids all the time, there's no promise to you and I. There's a promise to Am Yisrael. There's a promise to Am Yisrael, and that's never going to end. That, like you said, according to the sages, it doesn't in any way relieve you and I of our challenge, our responsibility for decision making and the consequences of our action, but we can take comfort in the fact there is a promise, right? And in that, it's the line that jumped out for me is, those of you who cleave to the Lord your God are all alive today. Let's remember, that's a statement of Moshe saying, oh, remember the mistake you made back the first 9th of Av? Right, when you split with each other and you couldn't agree on the mission, and it led to wandering aimlessly in the desert, and you all died off. Right? Because the mission's going to happen one way or another. The question is whether that generation was going to be there for it. Those of you who stuck with God, you're still on the mission. You're alive today. And that's what life is. Choose life doesn't just mean take care of yourself and eat well and exercise, which it also does. But it means attach yourself to that which is living.
By the way, there is a verse in this week's Parsha. There is a verse specifically about health, and that's called V'nishmartem nafshotechem. Right. Yeah. That specifically is about. There is a verse in this, because just an interesting thing that you're pointing out, that like there is a lot of spirituality, but then there's a minute there where God's like a healthy mind. What is it? A strong mind and a healthy body. Whatever it is. The point is that
and no bungee jumping.
That's right. No bungee jumping. We're not going to get into that, but the point is that you do, the Torah says to you, like, I need you to be healthy in order for your spirit will enliven you and keep you healthy, but keep that body healthy so that the spirit can exist within this body. And that, and that could be writ large as well, which is like, have a healthy spirituality within a strong nation.
And to that, I really want to add another piece of practical advice, if I dare. which is stay away from the catastrophic thinking that takes over people when their trauma kicks in. A lot of, I mean, when listening to former President Ruby Rivlin, who's someone I really respect and appreciated when he was president, say we have 24 hours to save our precious country. Like, what are you serving in that moment? Like, it's first of all just simply not true. Even if you believe that the one piece of the judicial reform that was passed is an awful gateway to dictatorial fascism, okay, fine. And I can hear it. I can hear it. No, I can hear it. I can hear it. I spend more time with those folks than you do, right? I can hear it. Fine. But you need 24 hours to save our precious country. A piece of legislation is going to pass, and there's a political process. And if with the energy that admirable energy, aside from the violence, admirable energy that the left has mustered in the streets, it's impressive to keep mass protests going for months, you know? So with that kind of admirable energy, there's a future. You could get organized. We're like, you know, this is what we did after Gush Katif, remember? Is that the other direct connection between where we are today and what happened in 2005 is that after having chosen not to do that absolutist, you know, block the streets, etc. thing, what happened is we organized, got more political, you know, gathered support, and lo and behold, there's a government. Love it, hate it. That's an important message. It's like, okay, you suffered a defeat. Well, drop back and rally. Don't fall into the simplistic, childish desire to speak catastrophically and therefore destroy.
Where does that come from, though?
With optimism.
Where does it come?
It's trauma.
Yeah.
It is
You're
trauma. It
making
is trauma. It is trauma. I'm telling you now, as a counselor, when people catastrophize and totalize, when they take one incident and they make it into the sum total of their being, their experience, the future, it is one of the, I would say, simane muvhak. It's one of the most apparent signs of trauma response, right? And there's enormous trauma in our society from any number of directions, a lot of which is, of course, clinical PTSD because of the number of combat soldiers, terror survivors, etc. that we have, aside from the trauma of Jewish existence bichlal and, you know, chewing on the Holocaust, and it is trauma. You know, I had a beautiful conversation with my dear friend Rabbi Aaron Leibowitz recently, and he pointed out that activism depends on optimism, and trauma needs catastrophe.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's why the real activists on the right and the left are going to move out of this crisis and say, wow, we got a lot of work to do. Let's start to do it. Whether it's political, whether it's social, whether it's building relationships, whether it's repairing society, whether it's taking over. I don't know that, but there's an optimistic sense we have work to. The people who are traumatized and frozen by their trauma will catastrophize. It's over. We're leaving.
I also wonder whether a media has an outsized influence on creating this catastrophic atmosphere, because when you go outside, things are not catastrophic. You're like, everything's fine. There's something about
yesterday between the hours of 4 and 7.
Right, Malka and I, you know, a lot of times think that if you just like turn off the TV and the Twitter for like a week, you'll feel much better.
I have friends who actually,
it's almost like there's
totally disconnected.
You know, when I was a kid, I moved to America, and the thing that completely shocked me was WWF wrestling. I was just like, what is this? What is
so
this?
American.
And it's like, right. And I was like, they know, everybody knows it's fake,
but
you can tell, but they love it. And I'm just like, is this I was amazed by that. I was amazed by I didn't like it. I didn't watch it. But the few times that I saw it, I was just like, wow, that is crazy stuff. And I feel like there's a WWF-ness out there sometimes, which is like, you know, to create this atmosphere of tension. Go ahead.
Well, don't forget, the media is a business, and what sells is outrage.
Right.
And I might even go so far to say that what is happening now is you'll forgive the term, but outrage porn. Right. The media has discovered that it doesn't even have to cover outrage anymore. It can manufacture it. And it can become a powerful driver for its own financial and social position. Media is remember media is its own power base within society, and just like every other business, its primary purpose is to make enough money to survive and thrive. That doesn't mean that every media personality and
Okay,
every
but you know,
newspaper is a cynic, but that's the purpose of the organism.
okay, but you know, let's say you're a store that makes sandwiches. You could, if you want to, stick in some kind of addictive spice so people come back to you, or you could be like, look, my job is to make sandwiches and to make sure that everybody's happy and make good sandwiches. Like it's like you can't make products that are immoral and destructive and say, look, that's business, right? You want to
can't.
create,
I mean,
real
you
good,
can't.
decent products,
People,
constructive, societal mode. That's not right.
okay, but look at the example you're using. Go look
Say
at
that.
the energy.
Go ahead.
Say, look at the example. You go look at the energy drinks that are being sold in stores. The crud that passes for food. Not even to talk about the fact that the cigarette industry is still going strong. So that apparently you can, and apparently there's
Right.
something within human society that desires it. Because it's easy to blame the media, but at the end of the day, if we all said, like you said, if we all said, I'm not going to consume that junk, they would change the model.
Right. We have one more verse. Well, I'd like to think that I wish we would demand from our media to feed us good stuff, to feed us healthy, positive stuff. And
So first, we need to
my
demand
friend,
it of ourselves.
yeah, my friend Pinchas says, for example, about this time, he's like, he keeps saying to our group, he says, don't succumb to don't do divisiveness. Don't do it. Don't do it, because that's what the enemies want. That's what he says. It's a very interesting point. He's like, don't argue so much. Like, let it go. Don't go into it.
And don't catastrophize.
There was a video, by the way. There was a video that brought actual tears flowing off my eyes yesterday. I tell you, I really like, and some people poo-pooed it. The cynics like totally poo-pooed this video, but basically there was this, right?
They do.
Right, so they poo-poo. So this guy is standing out there in front of a shopping area, and he's like, and he goes up to people and he goes, "Are you for or against judicial reform?" So the guy says, "I'm for it." So he goes, "I'm against it, but can I still have a hug?" And the Israelis are like, "Yeah, absolutely." And they give a hug. And then he's like, "Can I give you this wine and chocolate?" And then he keeps going to the next one. And he says, "Are you for or against judicial reform?" The guy says, "Against." He goes, "Well, I'm for it. Can I still have a hug?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, absolutely." And he gives him a hug. And the first guy says, "Can I give you this chocolate and wine?" And then the third time he does it again. But this time at the end, he reveals to the guy, he's like, "I'm actually not for or against it. Like, I'm really for achdut, for unity." It was a very beautiful video, and the cynics laughed at it, but I thought it was a very beautiful video, and I think other people did as well. What was really moving was not even the guy. That's not what even moved me. A guy who's like in that mode, I can understand.
Sure.
What moved me was the people's reaction, which was like, "Yeah, I'll give you a hug, my brother." And it was just like, it stopped me. I was just like, wow, that was so touching, that there's this really behind the media and the radicals. There's just a lot of love in the nation. Speaking of love, there is one verse in this week's Torah portion which can be described as the central verse of Judaism. One could say that it could be the central verse of Judaism. There's really two of them, but the first one is Shema Yisrael. Hear, O Israel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem is our God, Hashem Echad, God is one. And that is when my wife's grandfather was in the camps, a Russian officer came to liberate the camp, and he was in dire straits. And the Russian officer says to him, "Ich bin a Yid, I'm also a Jew." And then he says to him, Shema Yisrael, the phrase to identify himself. So it was like the way that this Russian officer on a horse spoke to my wife's grandfather, who was like in a ditch and about to die. And he told him, Shema Yisrael. So it's a very central phrase, and it encompasses within it like the first commandments: "I am God, you shall not have any other gods before me." But I personally find a lot of strength in the next verse, which I think is like the compass of being a Jew. It says, "V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha," love Hashem your God, b'chol levavecha, with all of your heart, b'chol nafshecha, with all of your soul, b'chol meodecha, with everything you got, with your possessions, with your worldliness, shall we say?
Yeah.
That's a very strong
everything
phrase,
that
and
comes
what
at you.
really, right? And the word, and you know what the key there to me is the three bechols, with all of it, like love Hashem with all of your heart, with all of your soul. Like don't leave a part that's out. Like with your good side and your bad side, just love Hashem with all of that, with everything. I find that to be extremely, how should I say? I know I don't want to say the wrong thing here. Well, comforting. I find it comforting because then I'm just it sets my compass in life. I'm like, God wants me to love him with everything I got. And when you have that, you're like, okay, so my vacations, I do it with the love of God. My, if I'm angry at my spouse, I got to remember that. If I'm thankful for having a great sandwich, it's got to have the whole heart and the whole soul and the whole stuff. It's got to be filled with the love of Hashem. I find that to be very comforting.
I mean, it's a powerful call, and it's obviously a parallel to V'ahavta l'recha kamocha, right? Loving our fellows, and in that sense, one is an expression of the other, and we could look either way. Meaning, the Jewish people are the vessel for the presence of God in the world. Therefore, if you love God, you have to love the Jewish people, right? And God is the creator of all, and brought us into the land and gave us our mission. Therefore, if you love the Jewish people, you got to love God, and so in this sense, it's a call to action, right? So it's not just comforting, but it's guidance, and also I think that the Mesirat Nefesh that you're pointing out, the sense that one needs to sort of go beyond even their limited capacities and just give it all, leave it all on the field, like they say. I think is an important general principle for today. Now is not the time to hold back, right? Not time to hold back with one's love and commitment. It's and that's unfortunately many of these calls for breakup and separation and the sort of very childish calls for civil war. I think a lot of it is actually people who are tired and don't want to struggle with each other anymore. You go your way, I'll go mine. It's an illusion. It may be a tempting illusion, but it's an illusion because love is very demanding. It's very demanding.
Right.
Lost you there in the chop again.
I'm having a little bit of I'm having a tad of technical difficulty here, Rav Mike. So I hope that we come back to you strong in just a second.
I hear you
internet
now.
connection is yeah, it was a little bit choppy, but sorry about that. I want to say, Rav Mike, that first thing, it's great to have you back on the show.
Good beer.
Yeah, I hear you as well. It's great to have you back on the show. And it's also, we are in the Torah portion of Ve'et Chanan, which is the second Torah portion in the book of Dvarim and Deuteronomy.
Oh, we got him off the line. Third of all, I'd imagine what Yishai was going to say is that it's Erev Tisha B'Av. It's just the eve of the 9th of Av, a time when really the call of the hour is to face the brokenness. And not to face the brokenness as just as a source of pain, but really as a source of opportunity. Right? I don't know if you heard what I just said, but I was trying to follow up on your list of the things that we're marking today.
Rav Mike, it's great to have you back on the show. First thing. Second thing is that two little things. First, Shmuel Goldman, our good friend from the north of Israel, from the Golan, says amen to something that we said earlier. But I wanted to just follow up. Last week's show was dedicated in honor of the memory of our mutual friend, his wife, Leah Goldman, before she passed away. Thank God Shmuel's got remarried, and he's been a great blessing to us in both of our lives. And we one more time remember Leah Goldman and the strong life that she led. It was her; she was taken, from our perspective, too quickly. From God's perspective, just on time. But we miss her a lot, and we her spirit still infuses the Golan Heights and in our lives in this show as well. So just wanted to say that. And I want to also say, I also want to ask you a question from Lou Weiss. Lou says, Yishai and Rav Mike, I have chosen not to shop at stores that closed down the other day because they closed for purely political reasons and have now chosen to purchase at stores that stayed open. How would you justify my stance morally?
I mean, I don't know why I need to justify your stance morally.
Well, how
Um,
would you if you had to? How would you, or wouldn't you?
I, I would be hesitant really too, because I think it feeds more of the divisiveness. Meaning, if you feel it was problematic that they shut down because of their political reasons, then why is it any less problematic that you choosing to give your custom to one store as opposed to the other because of your political? I mean, there's two sides of the same coin. If one is right, then I'm not sure why the other one wouldn't be. I can
Well,
empathize
wait, because I'm a customer and I don't want my store, to take a political stance. And if it does, it's like, okay, I'm like not reading that newspaper. I'm not. I don't.
That's fine, but do you
I
see
feel
that's the exact
distrustful
same
of it.
thing that fine, but that's the exact same the store did. The store said we are a financial entity owned by private or public individuals, and we want to show solidarity with what we believe is right. So we're going to shut down. So you're just both doing the same thing. Either you're both
Mm.
right or you're both wrong. From my perspective, you're both using your economic power to further your political views, which I don't think is necessarily wrong, but to call one different than the other is not so apparent to me.
Right. Okay. Well, so therefore you're saying it's so
Right now,
interesting. It's like, are you saying therefore don't do it, or are you saying,
I don't think that it's the
you know what I
enhancing the
mean?
divisiveness is. I think right now, I'll tell you this as a general principle. I think that the biggest mistake the leadership of the right has made over the last 6 to 8 months is not to appreciate the position of power within which that we found ourselves, and to like in a hurried and even dare I say somewhat piggish fashion try to like make a new reality, as opposed to having a sense of like, okay, we had a victory, it was a significant victory, and it's, if one looks just at the demographics and the cultural arc, it's probably the beginning of a potential shift. Let's move with wisdom, let's move with a sense of care for society. That's not what's happened. There's been a rush for power and a lack of appreciation to the consequences, and that's really in many ways why we are where we are. And so
Well,
therefore, let me just finish the
I
thought.
would say
And therefore, to
maybe.
continue to feed the divisiveness in any way
Mhm,
in the long run is a mistake. Because what we
mhm.
want is a country that hangs together.
Right. Right. But at the same time, sometimes you don't want to be bullied anymore, right? You don't want to be bullied. Like remember
You're only
what we
bullied
said
if you
earlier,
choose to
like in
be.
Gush Katif. Well, in Gush Katif, I felt bullied, and I felt that we didn't do enough to protest that bullying. Like we
Yeah.
underdid it. We underused our own power. It's a tough question. It's really a tough question. Interestingly, just coincidentally, this morning I wasn't feeling so good. So my wife asks me, when I need to relax, what do I do? So she's like, "What are you watching on YouTube?" And I was watching World War I documentary that I find relaxing sometimes to hear about. That's I don't know what to tell you. I just sometimes I watch good documentaries about war, and it's interesting to me. One of the things that was very interesting in this documentary, which was well done by PBS, is that they talked about the preamble to World War I. There was all these protests. One of them was communism, socialism, and the other one was actually the suffrage movement. Was very destabilizing
Hugely.
in the
In
UK.
Britain in
Yeah,
particular. Yeah.
yeah, it was very interesting. I never tied that into World War I, but they tied it in interestingly
They were
enough. I'm just
engaged in
saying,
what we would call terrorist acts. I mean, there were
right?
bombs, there were like
Yeah,
really, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, they were, and there's this video of
Hunger
this one lady,
strikes, mass
right?
arrests.
And this one lady ran into the Derby and got killed by the king's horse.
I
And
believe
then,
it.
and
Yeah. Just to
point
make
is that
the
right?
attention, yeah.
Yeah. So I thought to myself, gosh, there are times when there are times when you're fighting for something and you go all out. I know that my parents' generation was liberated from the Soviet Union because of American Jewish actions against the Soviet Union and protests that a lot of people are getting arrested at and stuff. So sometimes it's justified and sometimes it's not justified, and it's hard to know the line. It's hard to know the line. But I guess in this case, I don't know. I guess what in this case, how do we find out what the line is of legitimate use of power, economic protest, government power? Like you said that the government was in a rush to power. I think it probably came not exactly from a rush to power, but more from a sense of we're not really in power. So if we can actually get a little bit of done here, that would be great, because we're not going to be here for that long, because we're used to being kind of second class and not so powerful. And so, okay, I'm going to rush to get some legislation done.
Yes, but I think that that's misreading the arc of history here. Like I said, the future belongs to those who have children and build institutions. And if you look within our society, you can see very clearly who's doing that. And it would behoove us to think about what victory looks like. If, for God's sake, if we can't think about what victory looks like with our enemies, can we at least think about what it looks like with our brothers? You know, like it's been one of the biggest problems that we faced, you know, in the last 80 years here in the land. We cannot conceive of what victory looks like. Can we at least think about what it looks like as an internal social construct?
I have what I think is a clue into what victory. That's a great. I love how you phrase that, which is victory amongst ourselves. What it looks like to me, after thinking about this for a while, I came to the conclusion that victory looks like Zvulun and Issachar, Zebulun and Issachar, right? This like duo where one is an economic power and the other one is a spiritual power, and they learn to actually work well together and to share each other's gifts. Right, absolutely consensual. I'm saying that is a beautiful vision of there's the Tel Aviv and there's Jerusalem, and it's actually the dialectic between these two polarities, which is the beautiful thing about Israel. We could sell it like that, like Israel. Remember how they used to say about Lebanon? You ski in the morning and surf in the afternoon. Israel,
I didn't
you
know they said that about Lebanon, but
yeah, it used to be Beirut. They used to say it about Beirut. Beirut used to be before it was destroyed. It was the city that you could in the morning you could go skiing on the Lebanese mountains, and in the evening you could be on the beach in the Mediterranean, and it coexisted. Like here, you could be in Jerusalem. You could have spirituality in the morning, and you could have high tech and nightlife at night.
From the Temple Mount to the surfing.
Right. Okay. Yes. You can have this. It has this polarity. You have the modern and the innovative, and then you have the conservative and the spiritual, and they coexist together in a beautiful nation that has both of these elements, and they actually are nice. Both of the elements are nice. That's really to love each other, to like each other's different elements a little bit more, I think would be in a better shape.
And remember, the key ingredient to love at that point is respect. We're going to go into right now, but you know, the great social psychologist Erich Fromm defined the process of love as moving from care to responsibility to respect to knowledge. And one of the biggest problems we face in our society, and I'll just speak for sort of Anshe Shlomeinu, for us on the right, is we have a hard time respecting sometimes the part of the country that's not like us, and they certainly have a hard time respecting us. And therefore, when you can't respect another, when I say respect, see them as something unto themselves and not as what you need them to be or what you're gonna, then you can't know them. And that's the biggest problem, is we're in danger of not knowing each other any longer. So working on respect right now, I think, is a very important call in the moment.
Very good. Very strong words. Just an idea that I had. Instead of a protest in Tel Aviv, let's go out in tents to the big park in Tel Aviv and make Shabbat. Imagine if we just did Shabbat with singing and cholent and the whole thing. Let's go out and share the Shabbat with our brothers. That's something that brings us together. Instead of a protest movement, we have a Shabbat movement. We gotta. That's just one idea, one way of which we can like use this time right now to generate a different atmosphere. Rav Mike Feuer, thank you so much for joining us here on the Yishai Fleisher Show on the 9th of Av. People can connect to you in other ways. Tell us the ways that they can connect to you.
RavMike.com is probably the best way. I mean, Jewish Story, I've finished it, but it's still there at jewishstory.co. Stay tuned for the Jewish Heroism Project, which is the next phase of the work that I'm engaged in. I'm pretty excited about it. There'll be more to say about that probably, after Elul. And stay tuned. I got some Elul webinars coming up. If people want to sign up, you can always send me an email at ravmikefeuer@gmail.com or just go to ravmike.com.
Very good. And our good friend Erica, the show wouldn't be around without Erica. It wouldn't be complete without Erica. And Erica says from far away Scandinavia, she says, "Shalom, rabbis. Great to see you live again. Have an easy fast." Thank you very much, Erica, and God bless you.
Amen.
God bless you, folks, wherever you are. Look. Wait, one more. Shal says, wasn't it amazing that people walked from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem as a trial walk for the Aliyah L'Regel? That's right. I missed that. And Erica is from Sweden. I was right, but I didn't remember for sure. So that's why she's from Sweden. And Rav Mike, I want to thank you again, and God bless you. Stay tuned, stay strong, stay connected, stay part of it, and stay positive. We're going to get through this challenging time with Hashem's help. He didn't bring us back here to see us get destroyed. We are going to go through this trauma in this period and rebuild and make it even stronger and make the light of Israel, the light of Hashem, come from Jerusalem to the world. That's the promise, and that's actually what's happening here. Even though there's some cracks, those cracks are going to lead to a rebirth of the Jewish people in the land of Israel and Hashem's presence in Zion. Rav Mike, thank you so much for being with us.
It's a pleasure.